Welcome everybody to the Finance Committee meeting. With the Lord Mayor we have a quorum. There's no one else to co-opt at this point in time. We have apologies from Alderman Thomas and Councillor Coates, and the deputy is on the way. Or
we understand, so Chair.
We understand, so we'll just keep that. I think confirmation of minutes. Someone move. Alderman Sexton. All those in favour, those against, the item's carried. Now we have Councillor Dutta here, so someone can move to co-opt Councillor Dutta, please.
Moved.
All those in favour, all those against. Councillor Dutta, you're in the meeting now. Any indications of pecuniary or conflict of interest, please?
Yeah.
No indication of pecuniary or conflict of interest? Councillor Dutta, do you have a conflict of interest? Are you there, Councillor Dutta? Ground control to Mr. Councillor Dutta. I don't think he can hear us. Okay, can someone sort that out, please? Deputy, can you hear us? Can you wave? Yes, the deputy's there. Okay, someone try and fix the...
Craig will be inside there.
Yeah.
Craig, you've got it. Yeah, Craig's onto it. Okay, so we'll get to any conflicts of interest in a moment. Any transfer of agenda items? There'll be no transfer agenda items. We go into financial reports. Update of our financial statements. Is there any discussion?
Question to start with, Chairman. There's a capital expenditure, as I understand it, to 31st of March was only at about 44%, which is something like $18 million, and yet in the council report it says that we expect to achieve the full 34 million between now and the 30th of June 2021, which means we're going to be spending approximately the same amount in 3 months that we've spent in 9 months. Is that correct?
Chair, through you, can I just ask either Ms Dixon or Mr Doyle, have you got any further advice on that?
Ms Dixon or Mr Doyle, whichever one is game enough to give us some answers.
At this stage, the business is indicating to us that they anticipate spending the full capital budget this year.
Sorry, could you just repeat that a little bit?
A bit louder.
Is this turned on?
I'll go a bit closer or a bit louder, please.
Okay. At this stage, the business is indicating that they will spend the full capital budget this financial year, so yes, your assumption's correct.
I think, Chairman, to assist perhaps a little further, the expenditure noted in the statement there was at the end of March.
At the end of March.
And does not include commitments. Now, it still might be a bold call to say that all 100% of the program will be delivered, but certainly adding on commitments, it is significantly more than the percentage indicated, and bear in mind those figures are 6 weeks ago now.
So, given that it is six weeks ago now, have we had any update in that time to tell us what's happened in the last 6 weeks? Because we've only got about 6 weeks to go.
That's true. That's true, and it is a question that we're also asking the various project managers. And as I said, Chairman, I think it is a bold call to say that will be 100% delivered by the end of June. But certainly the figures, Mr Carr, I think were running at around 60.
It was closer to 60% with commitments included.
So when you say commitments, sorry to keep asking, when you say commitments, that means monies that we don't expect will have expended by the end of June, but relate to projects that have been commenced. Is that right?
No, Chairman, through you, it is money that is committed, so we may have sent a purchase order or accepted a contract, but we haven't actually paid the money from our account.
Right, but they will be paid for jobs that will be completed by the 30th of June, or is that money for jobs that may not be completed until sometime next year?
It's money that we anticipate spending, or that will be spent because we've issued a purchase order, but it actually hasn't come through as expenditure in our financial statements.
Okay, fine. All right, thank you. Now, one of the reasons for asking this is because there is further discussion about how our need to borrow, and it does suggest that we haven't needed to borrow as much as we thought, and we wanted to carry over some borrowings that we had negotiated, but that we were expecting to maybe borrow again quite large amounts of money as of the 1st of July. And my concern is whether we do actually need to do that, because if we're not spending the money that we've anticipated spending, then obviously there would be no need to borrow.
And Chairman, you're absolutely right. That's why we are monitoring the expenditure in both CapEx and OpEx closely, and we will only borrow when we need to. And so it does depend on where we're at in the particular point of view. And Ms Dixon may have more to add, but we'll either borrow this year if it's necessary, or in fact defer those borrowings until the next financial year.
Through you, Chair, just further to that, we have been advised in the last few days that we will also be receiving our financial assistance grants to the tune of 50% early, so in this financial year, which alleviates that need to borrow so early. And on top of that, we've just had our 4th claim of the NDRRA storm event funds approved. So that'll be an additional 4.6 million coming by the 30th of June.
Great, so that means there's a strong chance we won't need to borrow anywhere near as much.
That's correct.
Good, good, thank you. Otherwise, I'm happy to move the item, Chair.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, the way I'm reading this is that we may or may not need to borrow that money prior to the 1st. And if we need to borrow it, and if there's other money coming in, well, I think we need to have a look at that. There's no need to borrow money if we don't need to. I know it's approved, but okay. Someone move, please.
I did.
All those in favour, those against. Items carried. Have we got Councillor Dudder?
Yes, you have.
Oh, someone moved. I don't know if Councillor Dudder heard us before.
Oh.
Someone moved to co-opt Councillor
Yes.
Dudder. Okay. Councillor Dudder, I did ask before in regards to conflicts of interest. Do you have any conflicts of interest?
Yes, I do. 6.8.
6.8. So it'd be noted that Councillor Dudder has a conflict of interest on 6.8. Okay, 6.2, financial statement update. Any comments?
Chairman, if I may, this is for noting.
Yeah.
It's an error. It was also missed by the Auditor General. It's committee delegated. It doesn't actually change the cash or real position, but it is something that we will have to restate at the time of the next annual report.
Okay, so who's moving to
That's
receive
received
a
and
note?
noted, is it?
Sexton, anyone against? Anyone against? The item's carried. Fees and charges, City Innovation, further information.
Chair, is this,
Yes.
is this the one that you sent back because you thought...
Yes, this is the one I sent back in regards to Trafalgar.
So it looks as though it's just an increase of $14 a month? Is that
Yeah,
what
look,
you're saying?
look, at the end of the day, if we're getting these rates here at all these other car parks, we should be getting more at Trafalgar. That's as simple as that. So I think,
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to move it. I don't know whether Mr Carr would be wanting to add anything to it, or it's fairly self-explanatory.
Anything to add, but, Mr Carr, no?
Chair, we followed the recommendation of the committee and made an assessment of 11 other providers across the city. And there's just that one uptick on the Barrack and Liverpool Street car park due to its proximity to the cinema that we bumped up to $300 a month. All else is the same as previously tabled to committee.
I just want to make this one comment. Look, we've got car parks with a waiting list. Well, hey, there's a car park that's empty. You want to use it, use it. Anyway, someone move the recommendation, please. Alderman Sexton. Anyone against? No one against. Items carried. Okay, fees and charges, city governance. I think it's self-explanatory. Anyone want to move that?
Happy to move
Lord
that.
Mayor? Any discussion? No discussion. Anyone against? No one against. Items carried unanimously. Grants of benefits, 6.5. I have looked through this, my name's not on there, so I didn't get a grant or a benefit.
So question,
Yes.
Sultan Holdings, the rates for emission, does that relate to the Optus building or the Optus scenario that we...
Mr.
McDonnell.
Mr. McDonnell, please. Can't hide any longer. Yes.
The $399,746 assistance to Sultan Holdings rates for emission, does that relate in any part to the arrangements regarding the Optus scenario?
Through you, Chair, no, that's the development assistance deed that the council approved back in 2010.
Yeah, so the...
It's Wellington Centre, isn't
So
it?
follow-up
That's
question, we have
correct.
Wellington Centre. So we're not rebating the rates anymore for the Optus building because that doesn't meet our criteria, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Lord Mayor.
How long does the Wellington Centre one go for?
Sorry, Miss McDonnell, you're up again.
I might have to take that one on notice
Yep.
to give you an accurate date.
Okay,
Thank you.
could you just email all the members of the committee?
Will do.
Good,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Okay, any other questions? If there are no other questions, who's moving this?
I'm happy, is it receiving and noting?
Receiving, noting, Alderman Sexton.
Yeah.
Anyone against? No one against, items carried. Procurement quotation exemption report. This is the report. I can see innovation's getting a lot of work done. Any discussion? No? Someone move to receive the note? Or someone move the recommendation?
I'll remove parts 1 and 2. Receive and note the exemption granted.
Okay, anyone against? No one against, items carried. City mission, short-term licence extension. Look, you know,
Chair, if I may,
I say I told you also, but anyway.
this is really there as a safety net, a city mission. There is a chance that the planning matter will be dealt with in time by the 31st of May, but there's also a chance it may not. So we felt it was prudent, given the timing of everything, to bring this before committee. Given the council's previous decision, there was no officer delegation on this one. We felt it prudent just to get committee's approval for a month extension if necessary.
Look, Alderman Sexton, may I just suggest, just in case they might need another week or 2 weeks, sure, I'm in the firm belief
The
that
place, yeah.
I'm in the firm belief that our officers and directors know where we want to go with this. I personally would like to someone add that, you know, we delegate any further extension if required. Someone can move something like that. Delegate any further extension if required to the general manager.
Well, I'm happy to do that, but I have a question first.
Yeah.
So you said, through you to the director, you said, director, that the issue may be planning approval. Is that right? So the delay may be us.
The planning process,
The
Chair,
planning
through
process,
you,
right.
yes.
So, and you also said that the planning process may be complete and approved and all the rest of it by the 31st of May, but if it isn't, then they may need a further month. So I'm happy to move something along the lines that subject to, or that the approval be given to extend the current licence agreement until such time as the planning approval process has been completed. Because if that's the only delay, then
But, yeah,
or
Chair,
alternatively for a month or until the planning process has been completed. So to 30th of June 2021 or until the planning process has been completed. Because if our planning process takes until the 3rd of July, then the chairman's absolutely right, that would be silly.
Chair, I think Deputy's got
Sorry,
a...
Deputy, I'm sorry about that. It's very hard from over here, but you go.
No, that's okay, Chair. That's the first time I put my hand up to speak. Look, I think this is a sensible move by the council. Obviously, it needed to come back to us, and I feel that, you know, like having a few safeguards in there is quite a good thing, because we don't want things to fall flat again, and you know how things might go. So I'm very much in support of this extension, and understand some sensible boundaries is suitable as well.
Okay.
So therefore, Chairman, if I'm moving this, then I'm happy to move it that we do give them to the 30th of June, because that allows them to move in, it takes a bit of pressure off them, or until the planning process has been approved, whichever is later.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they get their month, so they can plan, they can move in, they're not rushed, but if it takes a little bit longer, then they'll only get till the planning process is finished.
Delegated to the GM.
Yeah, happy
It needs to be
happy to
delegated.
do that.
Okay.
Just through you to Alderman Sexton, approved or resolved? Because I guess it is possible they may not achieve a permit, unlikely, but it is possible.
I think resolved.
Oh,
is a better
resolved,
word.
yeah, sure, resolved. Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Lord Mayor.
Is it just planning, or is there also building approval? Are they modifying the building?
Through you, Chair, we understand there are some modifications to be looked at, but the request from Hobart City Mission, they seem to think it's planning approval is the significant hurdle. They've not asked for anything in relation to building approval.
Okay.
Look, sorry to interrupt, but some people think that's one of the same. I'm not being thing, but could you just slightly amend that to planning and building, because we still have to handle that.
Yeah, I know, but, yeah, all right, okay.
And surveyors
Yeah,
are
yeah.
hard to get.
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor, your go.
Thank you, Chair. That, you know, in the event that it goes to appeal, then we're talking about months. So I'm just wary, and, you know, who knows what happens with planning. Sometimes these things can be caught up for quite some time. So I think we probably need that time. You said a month. Sorry, Alderman Sexton, what was your either or?
Yeah, I said planning/building approval, whichever is later. Maybe I have to put whichever is sooner. If you're, you know, I agree with you, and building sometimes takes a long time as well. We don't want to go into 6 months. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I think we have, you know, like if it's only extended to a certain, you know, like I think it needs to come back. It's no good for this to be in place for another 6 months.
The director wants to speak.
Chair, this is the exact issue staff also wrestled with in drafting this recommendation, and perhaps a way to deal with that scenario is if there is an appeal, that the matter's brought back before council.
Okay, all right. So that'll be
Back
part
before
4.
committee, if there is an appeal.
Okay, well, we'll add that into the amendment. Should there be any third-party appeal in regards to this, the matter comes back to council.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Thank you. Everyone happy with that? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Amendment's carried. I'll put a substantive motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Item's carried. Thank you very much for that. Lease of part of Level 4 Council Centre. See you later, Councillor Dutta. He's gone. Okay, the item's open for discussion.
Okay, Chairman, I have a question. I have a question through you to the Director. What do we require of organisations that we grant leases to? Do we require them to have any insurances in place or anything like that? I can see that this Culturally Diverse Alliance of Tasmania has made an effort to get themselves registered as an association, and that they've put together a board, etc., but they've also said that they've got no money, and apart from funding business cards and bits and pieces, do they need to have any insurances, such as, you know, in the event of a fire that they might cause, or somebody gets injured at work or something along those?
Some insurance.
Yeah, Chair, through you, the requirements that we've set out are in attachment D to the report, but I notice it actually doesn't, I don't think, specifically pick up the issue of insurance, but that would be a standard part of our lease documentation. We would never, Chair, through you, lease out a council property where we didn't require the tenant to have some insurance. But Mrs. Parker, I don't know whether you have anything further to add to that. Certainly, the requirement for insurance is a standard clause in our lease documentation.
And does the association know that? Because some of these insurances are quite expensive, I know, because I've seen, you know, insurance premiums for other not-for-profits, and they're not cheap sometimes. So are they aware of that?
Through you, Chair. Have we had that discussion with them?
Yes, through you, Chair, we have had that discussion.
Okay, so given that we don't have any evidence of insurances at this point in time, I'm wondering whether we should defer this until we've got all the documentation that's required. Because this is a brand new organisation. They haven't actually done anything yet. What they're trying to do is excellent, and I'm fully in support of it, but they haven't done anything. They've got no runs on the board at all. They're asking for 2 years or ongoing, which is quite a long time for an organisation that's actually achieved nothing yet. And we don't know whether they've got all the insurances. We don't know whether they've got funding for insurances. So I'm just wondering, I mean, there are two options. We could give them a short-term lease, 3 months, which would allow them to get themselves organised in whatever way they need to, or alternatively, rather than put them in there and then have to kick them out without insurance, we wait until all the documentation has been provided and we're actually sure that they meet the criteria before we grant them the lease, because I'm thinking that's what you're asking Council to approve.
Yes. And if I can say, maybe a third option is to delegate that to the CEO, that's to the satisfaction of the CEO, unless you specifically wanted it to come back to committee.
Well, I think the committee would be interested to know that this particular organisation has achieved, meets the criteria and is does have is within our building. I think I'd like to know that, and as I said, I'm supportive of it, but I just don't want I don't want us or them to fall foul of what's required.
Lord Mayor.
I think Deputy might have been
Sorry,
first.
Deputy, were you hand up?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
You go for it.
So are we, do we not know that they have insurance? Do we actually know that?
At this point in time, I haven't read it anywhere. No one can provide that information, so I think it needs to come back. Yep.
But if that's something we can find before the meeting, then surely we can just pass it or defer if they don't have that information.
Well, we need to have, sorry to interrupt, we need to have something in the recommendation about the insurances being provided by the council meeting, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm happy to.
Yeah,
put in
before you do, there might be some other things. I'm just flagging. Lord Mayor.
Look, I'm very supportive of the group's aims and ambitions. My only concern is, I guess, that access to this office space seems to be a bit based on, hearing about it from, and if you're well connected to council, you hear that it's available. And this organisation, I just wonder how much they'll actually use it, because there's no employees. There's, how do we know this is the organisation that needs this space the most if we haven't gone out to a sort of broader EOI to say, okay, we've got this many office spaces in this location, tell us about your needs and why you need an office space, and, because a volunteer-led organisation is probably going to need this after 5 mostly. And is it suitable for after 5? You can go there after 5 o'clock, yeah. But yeah, just whether it'll be well utilised, whether they've given you any indication about why they actually need an office space at this stage. And
Chairman, through you, I'll start, then Mrs. Park, if you can finish, please. Certainly, it has been council's practice in recent years that we do effectively allocate this space on the basis of request. There has not been, to my understanding, a broad EOI. In part, that is because it is not, it's not great office space. It often requires a bit of work to make it usable for the particular tenant, And again, we have had a practice of making it available to not-for-profits, in part for that reason. Mrs. Parker, have you got anything to add to that, please?
Through you, Chair, the information that we've received from CDAT is that they would use the space of a day and also of an evening, would be used as an office for committee members to store their equipment, photocopying, computer work, etc., as well as hold their committee meetings. And in regards to Mr. Short's statement, as far as I'm aware, there has not been an EIO process undertaken. It has basically been on a needs basis of people applying to use those spaces.
Yeah,
That are
but it's
aware
not
of it.
necessarily a needs basis, is it? Because we don't know who might be in greater need. So we're just sort of going with who has heard about it. Anyway, I mean, it's not. It's just for it is valuable space. I mean, strategically valuable, and I'm sure there'd be a whole range of organisations would be interested if they knew about it, particularly at $50 a year for a 2-year lease. That's like gold to a lot of NGOs. So yeah, can we try and change what we're doing with this so that we have got more of a system for the future? I mean, how many other spaces have we got?
We can report back. If it is the will of the committee, absolutely, we can report back
I might
on
be
a
able to help as
process, for leasing out. I don't know, is there still, Mrs. Parker, the space that's still available up there, I'm assuming is not inconsiderable?
Through you, Chair, the majority of the spaces are managed in the corporate property area. So our division really only gets involved if an agency comes to us and we basically show them through and do the reports. As far as I'm aware, there is not a lot of single office space available. There's some open shared areas that have shared facilities, but in order to make this particular space lockable, we're putting in temporary barriers. So there's not actually a lot of single offices, but there's certainly some open, vacant, shared areas that we use for communal office spaces. So I think there is still some opportunity for that type of usage.
So we're actually making some modifications to accommodate this group?
Through you, Chair, in the report, we're requesting them to pay the $200 to have some temporary barriers put up to make sure they can lock it off.
Okay.
Look, where my concern comes in, the space is got a $4,400 per annum valuation. I'm all for helping organisations. This is actually a grant to this organisation. I think we've forgotten that. Yeah, look, you know, it's great that we want to charge them $50 a year, but it's a grant. So to my point of view, I think it needs to go through another process as well. Is a council, going to approve a grant to this organisation? And there are processes that we go through to provide grants to organisations. That's number one. Number two, is the $4,400 per annum valuation, is that just the space, or is it just the space plus power and X, Y, Z and that? Now, I know because I run business centres myself, and the tenants pay for their space and they contribute to power and X, Y, Z and rates and whatever have you. So, the valuation I would assume there is only the valuation of the space and not the add-on costs associated with the site as well. So, look, I'm just giving you what the commercial reality of how the commercial sector operates. We're not going down the track of a commercial sector, but we've got to actually look at what is the total potential of this grant that we're going to give this organisation, because I think we've missed that. Missed that component.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to just have a few more deliverables that we could sort of ask of the group that help with our welcoming cities, or like we ask them to sit on our Networking for Harmony group, or and maybe make it more like a 12-month lease, because it is a start-up, so that 2 years is quite a long time that we don't. We should maybe just pull it back a little bit and maybe have some other.
Look, sorry to interrupt, Lord Mayor. I personally would like to see this come back sorry, Deputy, I'll get to you in a moment, sorry about that. I'd like it to come back and to take into consideration those points that I've just raised, because it's a grant, and what are the aspects in regards to outgoings as well, and I agree with the Lord Mayor. I actually don't agree with the 12 months, and I'm only saying that on a different light. Who knows what this council may or may not be doing with all its properties, which is at the moment being looked at by KPMG. So let's seriously consider that. If we've got a 2-year lease, and just not saying it's going to happen, but what if we tomorrow someone comes and offers us an amount that we cannot refuse, and they don't want to have someone there paying $50 a year for 2 years. And I'm sort of going to the point of what Alderman Sexton said. There's a number of things that we've still got to overcome, and it could be that it's a 3 month lease plus,
an option.
Another. But I'd like it to come back and give us some answers to all those points that I've raised and the Deputy raised. So I'm not being... Deputy, sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
You have the floor.
Yeah, I take these points, but I have a question through you to Mr. Short or Ms. Parker. How often do we scrutinise organisations when they come forward to lease? Is this a standard level of scrutiny that we bring to bear on organisations? Because I don't know what other organisations are necessarily there, but I've certainly never had this kind of conversation before in relation to this. So, through you, Chair.
Mr. Short.
Chair, through you, we are refining that process as we go on this journey, and I think every time we've looked at a lease in that space, we've added some more criteria to what we need, and certainly this time we did seek some advice from Wise, Lord and Ferguson, our auditors in the first instance, as to the things that they would advise us that CDAT should be providing to the council, and that's why we have this list here in this report. Can I also note, part 3 of the recommendation, Chair, its intent is to pick up that issue of the grant, that the gap between what is a commercial rent and the actual rent charge does get noted as a grant in the annual report. And certainly with regards to the outgoings, it is office space, and so it is not separately metered. So any rent that the council agrees to strike is inclusive of those outgoings, because there's no ability to separate meter up there.
Yep.
And if I just might say something else, Chair, I think the purpose of this office space that we have available is to be supportive, and I'd hate to think that we were seeing, whilst we're doing our due diligence, that we're not overstepping the mark of what we really require of an organisation.
Yeah, can I just make a comment? If I can.
Just one moment, sorry. That was a comment, Deputy. Thank you. Lord Mayor.
Yeah, I think there was some questions asked a few months ago about another group that was put through the ringer a little bit. There was a climate change group. But I feel like if we could just have a sort of more of a process where we call for expressions of interest and have a bit more of a system, then it would be better than this kind of randomness of whether you hear about it or not, and whether someone lets you know, and it all seems a bit too casual for what is important space. I think the one beforehand for Deputy Lord Mayor, the climate change group, I think we were suggesting we had to wait until they were registered with the Charities Commission, which was, I think, too high a bar to jump over, because that's a very complicated process. But somehow I just think these are important spaces, and there's a lot of people that would be interested in them.
So the ACNC is not difficult. I did it for Theatre Council Tasmania. It's not difficult to do. No, to get charitable is, but not to get to not-for-profit. So it's not, it's, you know, like everything, it's lots of forms and you have to wait and the minister has to sign off and all the rest of it. But it's not actually a complicated process. But that's not a requirement that we have of them. I think it's, they've met that requirement in the sense that they've got CBOS or whatever it is, and we only require ACNC or CBOS registration. Maybe in the future we should require ACNC, but at the moment we don't, so I wouldn't want to hit this group with something that others don't have to meet. I agree with the Deputy on that. I think 2 years is way too long, and for the moment, because I agree with the Chairman, we know that all of our buildings are being looked at, and we do not want to lock anything in at this point in time. Plus, this is a brand new organisation, and I'm not trying to make any suggestions about or put the mockers on them or anything, but we don't actually know what's going to happen. A lot of organisations start with great intentions, and people just find that they don't have the time that they thought they did. So we don't know what's going to happen. They've got no runs on the board at all. I'm happy to give them, say, 6 months, initially subject to providing all of the insurance documentation and all that sort of thing, with a view to an extension up to 12 months, based on, in part, what comes back to us from KPMG with respect to the future of that space. But they do need to meet the criteria that includes expenditure on insurance policies, because that might be rate limiting.
Can I confirm then, so committee is suggesting we defer this to come back with a further report on that detail?
Yeah.
And then a second report to a future finance meeting on a process more generally about space in the council centre?
Well, I'm happy to approve it with Alderman Sexton's modification of just a 6-month lease and clarity on the insurance, and then so make the decision on this tonight, but it's limited, but then a further report on how we make community spaces available for lease and run a sort of more of an open EOI process.
Sydney do that all the time. I get stuff from Sydney all the time telling me that there's space that's being opened and calling for expressions of interest. So exactly. It's commonly done. Maybe they have better space, but it is done by other states. You know, talk to Sydney, see what they do. They have a program.
I think
yeah,
the other
Deputy.
Yeah, I'd support the going ahead rather than deferring. I think, I think we know what we need to follow up with, and part 2 of the motion with specific reference to insurance, I think we'll cover that off. So I'd sooner not defer.
I still have my concern about how we're going to treat this in regards to a grant, because it's a grant. Sorry. It is a grant. And we haven't dealt with that component.
It has been our council's practice and policy for many years that when there is a difference between a commercial rent and the actual rent that the committee or council decides on, that it is noted as a grant or benefit in council's annual report.
Okay. Well,
that's what part 3 of the recommendation reflects.
Okay.
So do we need to clarify, Culturally Diverse Alliance will be granted a 6-month lease at the nominal rent of $50 for part of the 4th floor, on the condition that that bears the cost associated with installing a petition to enclose the lease area and provides evidence of appropriate insurance policies and any other requirements of the Hobart City Council lease agreement.
Yes.
And that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to finalise the terms, and it be recorded as a grant.
And through you, Chair, with a 6-month option, or just 6 months full stop?
Look, you're going to go six, and you might as well give them an option to 6 months.
Right. 6 plus 6, yeah, okay.
And then the final part would just be that a further report be provided on appropriate EOI processes for temporary community office rentals or something.
Council centre building.
Yeah.
Okay, Deputy. Okay, I'll put the item. Anyone against? No one against. The item's carried. Thank you very much. Can someone bring back Councillor Dutta, please? Right, new policy, Chief Executive Officer, exercise of powers. Someone move, please.
Chairman,
Anyone against?
Name, really.
No one against. Item's carried. Right, annual report, progress report. Any comments? No comments. Someone moved to receive and note, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyone against? No one against. The item is carried. Committee status, is it right?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
I missed
Yep,
anything?
item 7.
Committee status. Someone moved to receive a note.
Yeah.
Anyone against? No one against. Item's carried. I think it's questions, isn't it, next? So, response to questions. Someone moved to receive a note.
See, remove that.
Yeah. Anyone against? No one against. Received and noted. Any questions on notice? Questions without notice.
I just have a follow-up question on my rates collection and capital works expenditure by suburb, and I apologise to the staff for this again. But thank you very much for that. That's great. It's really important that we know that. Can we provide information on rates from residential versus commercial properties? I assume we know that. So, in other words, the breakup of by number of properties and by actual rates, commercial versus residential.
In the suburbs.
In those because we've got the list of suburbs. So, how many commercial properties are there in Battery Point as the top one? How many residential properties they are, and what component of that $6 million rates are commercial as opposed to residential, and the same for everything.
Okay.
For all the others.
Okay.
Chair, I'll take that on notice, but
Yeah.
Ms McDonnell would just like to ask a clarifying question.
Oh, okay.
It's a clarifying question.
Thank you for the question. I just wanted to clarify, we have eight land uses in the municipal area. So I just wanted to clarify, was it commercial and residential, or is it residential and non-residential? Which non-residential would capture commercial and industrial, quarry and mining, primary production.
Yes, so yes,
vacant
probably.
land.
Yeah, so yes. Thank you for that. Yeah,
Thank you.
residential, non-residential. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah,
Lord Mayor.
I've got a question. Just whether we can get advice on whether we could move back to a more normal layout of the chamber. Whether we can go back from the COVID distancing to a more sort of normal setup.
Yeah, well, especially if Parliament's doing it. What's...
Chair, taken on notice, but I understand Mr Jackson is preparing a report for the next council meeting
Okay.
for you to consider.
And that's reminded me of something, sorry about that. When I'm still seeing people queuing madly to get into the market on a Saturday, and they're very, very long queues, and I'm just wondering, why are we doing that? Are we still limiting the numbers, are we? And is that a requirement, or are we doing that?
Chairman, I can answer that one. Yes, we are still a registered event with the state government for the purposes of COVID, so we're a level 3 registered event. That means we can have up to 4,043 people in the market footprint at any one time. So if you are seeing queuing, it is because we have reached that limit.
Yeah, no, I understand why. I was just wondering why we're doing it, because they're allowing people to footy.
Yeah, through you, Chair, we have the same issue with the Aquatic Centre. They do sit in very strict event requirements with the state government. So while venues such as the theatre have had there's been some relaxation on the approach, there's been no relaxation on events such as Salamanca Market or indeed facilities such as the Aquatic Centre.
Can we write to the Premier and just ask why?
I think it's a very good idea.
Why on earth we're doing that? Because it's just torture for those poor people that have come a long way, some of them, and they're queuing up for half an hour.
I'll give you the best one. The best one is the airport, right? You get to the airport, you've got your mask, you cannot sit next to somebody, right? There's 2 seats always vacant, right? Prior to boarding the plane, you are in the airport with a mask, following COVID, but you can't sit next to anyone there. But 3 seconds, 2.5 minutes later, you're sitting next to the person that was 2 seats up from you.
Yeah,
right next to him,
great.
with a mask on.
So, Chair,
This has gone beyond a joke. There needs to be things, so maybe we should delegate the general. We can't. Well, this is questions. So I think that the points are taken, and maybe a nice someone write to the Premier or something like that. Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? Thank you. Those questions will be answered in due course.
Thank you.
Someone moved to go into closed.
Yeah, happy to.
Alderman Sexton.